Javier from Proactive Dog Training, and we're going to talk about recalls. There are 4 different aspects that we're going to cover today. The first one is going to be a touch exercise, so getting your dog to touch your hand so they can have a goal when you call them. We're going to talk about some leash pressure, and that will be to make the recall not optional, and use tools like e-collars or leashes to get the dog to give in to that pressure. We're also going to talk about the communication with your dog so they know when they're doing things right, when they're doing things wrong, and your timing and also the order and sequence on how you say these things when you follow through. And finally, the last thing is going to be just some of the little tips that can make it more likely that your dog will do things in a more natural way instead of you having to make them do it every single time. So the next part is working on getting your dog to touch your hand. So it's a touch game. So you're gonna hide a treat right here where on your thumb, and you're gonna have your fingers flat, and your right hand is gonna face forward so they can touch your palm. You're gonna present it. Your dog is gonna be interested in that treat, so the dog is gonna come touch your hand. As soon as they do, you're gonna say yes and then give a treat. Then repeat that a few times until the dog is pretty fluent at it, where they just as soon as they see that flat hand forward, then they come and touch it and get a treat. Then you can start fading the treat. So now, instead of having the treat every single time right there, you're still gonna give a treat, but this time the dog will touch the hand without a treat, and then you say yes and give them the treat after. It's fine if you don't have the treat ready, you can say yes and then go get the treat. That is actually the proper order and sequence. What you don't want to do is open the treat bag first and then say yes, because then your yes means nothing. What means something is you touching the bag, not the word yes. So again, present your hand, your dog touches it, yes, then give a treat. Get a treat from wherever, or give them a treat that you had ready for them. That is a touch exercise, and over time, you're gonna start adding distance. So you're gonna ask your dog when you're farther and farther away. You're gonna start adding distractions, maybe have somebody kind of distract the dog a little bit and call them yes and treat when they do touch. So this part is about leash pressure. So this one is very, very simple exercise. Pull lightly, they give in, yes and treat. Pull lightly, they give in, yes and treat. Pull lightly, they give in, yes and treat. Once your dog is comfortable wearing that stuff, then the leash pressure exercise is just that. Pull, they give in, yes and treat. Make sure you do not drag your dog. So if you drag your dog, then it defeats the purpose, because your dog is not really learning what they're supposed to do, which in this case, it should mean this. From your dog's perspective, it should be this pressure, if I give in, I get rewarded, and the pressure goes away. It's a form of removing pressure, so negative reinforcement if they come to you, and then positive reinforcement for them coming to getting to you. The concepts of what leash pressure is and how to introduce things like an electronic collar. So the idea behind it is escape conditioning. It's just getting your dog to learn to turn off or get rid of a sensation, an annoying sensation. So in this case, it's gonna be giving in to leash pressure. So you pull, they give in, yes and treat. We talked about that a little bit. And then the next part is actually, if you introduce an electronic collar, then you can apply some pressure. When your dog kind of lets you know, I feel something, then you can pull, they give in, yes and treat. And as soon as they start coming to you, then you turn off the pressure. That is teaching the dog you can get rid of this annoying sensation by coming to me. Then you go back to name it, same as like what you did with the leash pressure. You didn't say fluffy here, even though you have done fluffy here before to touch your hand. You're not gonna say fluffy here. First, getting used to the leash pressure and giving in to that. So you can then use it as a correction If your dog is distracted with something, you say Fluffy here, they don't want to come, they're not interested. There's a squirrel that's more important than the treat you have. So the leash pressure, that leash work that you have done, that you apply it, and then they give in because they've gotten used to giving into that pressure, and because it's frankly a little bit annoying. You're gonna do the same thing with the e-collar. So you have to lay a foundation so the dog understands pressure, I get rid of this, I control this pressure by coming to mom or dad or trainer, whoever's training them. They need to get rid of that sensation. That's the same concept for the leash as it is for the e-collar. Then after you introduce the sensation, then you're gonna stop using it randomly. You're gonna start now using it more using it after you give the command. So you'll say Fluffy here, then if they don't come, apply the stimulation, pull on the leash. That's how the dogs are you're gonna make them come to you. And then when they do, as soon as they start, get excited and reward them, yes, and treat and get excited, make sure that they're doing it. So what happens is you end up with a dog that understands, there's no point of me staring at this squirrel. When they say here, this is my chance to get rid or avoid a sensation, a bad sensation, and this is my opportunity to get rewarded. So the communication system. So this is the part where you give feedback to your dog. And we've discussed this already while we were talking about the yes and the treat, but we haven't talked too much about the no. So the yes, you're gonna use it is gonna be a yes with a couple of extra S's. So if your dog, you say Fluffy here, they come and they touch your hand, you say yes, give a treat. If you can say good and just give feedback. Feedback is going to be super important right now at this stage because you're encouraging your dog to do it. So you say Fluffy here, they start coming, good boy, and then yes and treat. So good basically means keep doing what you're doing, you're getting closer to a yes. The next part will be the negative side. Let's say that you call your dog and your dog goes, there's a squirrel over here. You know, we've learned how to make it happen by applying pressure, but at some point we separate, or we as proactive dog training, we separate the command from the pressure. So instead of saying Fluffy here, if they don't come, we apply the pressure. Instead of continuing that, then what we want to do is we're going to say Fluffy here. If they don't come, then now it's time to, instead of applying the pressure with the command, we're gonna say no. We'll say no and apply the pressure. Apply the e-collar pressure, the leash pressure, whatever it is. Make sure you don't drag the dog. Just apply the pressure, enough pressure for them to want to get rid of it, but not too much where you just drag the dog. So you put the pressure, they give in, celebrate. As soon as they do, good boy, you celebrate. And you can even say, let's say that you've moved on to not just pressure, but just a little correction, just one tap. As soon as that happens, that will open a window of attention on the dog. So as soon as that happens, you can give the command again. So you can say Fluffy here. After you corrected the dog, they come, yeah, and that you celebrate like good boy, and then yes, and treat once they touch. So that is gonna be how the order and sequence will go once you're proofing or testing the recall. So it will be Fluffy here. Let's say he ignores you. He chooses not to come. If he comes, we know what to do. He comes to touch your hand, you say yes and treat, and then play with them, let him do whatever. But if he doesn't, at this point, you're not just gonna pull. Earlier, we were discussing how you're gonna pull, and you're gonna start doing that to make it not optional. But now we're gonna separate the command from the correction. So Fluffy here, they don't come, no, correction. If they don't give in, you keep going, and then once they start coming, good boy, celebrate. If you were able to do just one, no, little correction, Fluffy here, he comes, yes, celebrate. That way they really, really understand which one's the good decision, which one's the bad decision. So this is the dog after you give the command. They kind of start thinking, if I do this, I get a reward. If I don't, there's a correction. So this one is more about little tips and tricks that can help make sure that you're sending the right message and make sure that you're successful with your dog. First part is know your dog. Some dogs really love to play, so use play as part of your recall. Your dog comes, they follow the rules that you've set. You said here, they come, they touch your hand, and then you say yes. Instead of giving a treat, you play tug with them. You play ball with them. That can be a form of reward. Or let's say then you added a sit. So now you say Fluffy here, they come, touch your hand, you do the sit motion where you do that, they sit down, and you can say free and let them go sniff around. That's another way that can really help a dog understand I'm not taking away your freedom, which that's the other part. The main reason why dogs stop coming when called, a lot of puppies come when called willingly, but as they get older, they get worse, and that baffles people all the time. But now think about it from the dog's perspective. Let's say that you call your dog and your dog has gotten used to every time you call them, then you put him in the crate. So you go into work, so you let your dog out free in your fenced in yard, and now every time you call your dog, you put him away. And pretty quickly your dog is going to start resisting that. Yeah, eventually you can make them do it, but they're going to resist it. So you're going to always fight your dog. So to prevent that, to prevent from fighting your dog all the time, I want you to create a rule where you only bring them in one time out of every 5 times. So you call them, Fluffy here, they come touch, yes treat, send them away. Fluffy here, yes treat, send them away. And by away is like if they want to go play outside. If they want to play with you, then play with them. So that's kind of the how you prevent them from thinking you're gonna take their freedom away. So don't just call them to put them inside. Call them and then reward them and let them do their thing. The next tip is for those dogs that are not that motivated. So let's say that you've done everything. You did the touch, you did the leash pressure, now you did e-collar pressure, let's say, and now you're where you just say no, correct them, and then call them again, and that's going pretty smoothly. But you notice that when you call them, because your dog is not that food motivated, they're not that play motivated, they kind of want to just sniff around, they come, but they come a little bit slower. Something that can motivate certain dogs is if you, as they're coming to you, you run back a little bit. Be careful, don't get hurt, watch what's behind you, don't trip. But if you run back a little bit, sometimes that motion back allows the dog to move forward a little bit quicker. Then if you have a cue that tells them we're about to play, like I use for my dog, I can say yes, or I can say, or if you say free, whatever word you use to kind of like get the dog to now go back to get a treat. And again, in our case, will likely be a yes. So you say yes before they even touch your hand. That might motivate them more to come faster. Or use as they come, instead of giving the treat, you say yes and they touch. Instead of giving the treat, you throw the treat. So tossing the treat and them catching it sometimes gives a little bit more excitement. So then next time they're coming, now you say yes, and you can even toss that treat. So now you start motivating the run instead of them just getting motivated after they touch. So this will be bending the rules a little bit and changing it from touching you every time to now coming, and now perhaps he gets 2 rewards, one to increase the speed and then the other one for touching. So so those can be ways that you can help your dog stay successful at coming when called, and more importantly, want to be around you. Often we just let dogs do their things, but the truth is they like to play. So most dogs like to play. So you can play tug, you can play fetch, you can play even treat games where you toss some treats. Things like that will keep them engaged and motivated to come to you willingly without you having to fight them every time.